The Vietnam War stands as one of the most bitter defeats in U.S. military history. American veterans emerged from the conflict with deep psychological scars, not just from bloody battles, but also from the countless dangerous traps laid by the Vietnamese forces. These simple yet highly creative traps are a testament to the art of guerrilla warfare practiced by our military. One of the most terrifying traps that American soldiers encountered during the Vietnam War was the Punji stake trap. Bamboo, a familiar symbol in Vietnamese life and culture, became a highly effective weapon. The punji stakes were made from sharpened bamboo spikes, placed in deep pits and camouflaged with branches and leaves. This trap was simple in construction, but extremely effective and difficult to detect in the dense jungle. When soldiers unknowingly stepped on the camouflage, they would fall into the pit and be impaled by the sharp stakes, capable of piercing even military boots. What made these traps even more horrifying was that the stakes were often coated with human or animal waste, leading to severe infections in the wounds. American soldiers might not die immediately, but would suffer excruciating pain in the jungle, where the high temperature and humidity created an ideal environment for bacteria to thrive. Without timely medical intervention or the availability of painkillers and antibiotics, the situation would quickly turn into a nightmare for the entire unit. Transporting a wounded soldier not only slowed down the unit's movement, but also made the entire group an easy target for ambushes. It was a psychologically stressful experience, having to carry a comrade while listening to his screams, which could inadvertently reveal their position to the enemy. This made the journey through the jungle more exhausting and dangerous than ever. In many cases, the stakes were positioned with their sharp points facing downward, trapping the enemy soldier in the pit, making it impossible to pull his leg out without tearing his flesh. This forced the entire unit to focus on digging the wounded soldier out, during which the risk of being impaled by the stakes was almost unavoidable. This was when the punji stake trap inflicted the heaviest damage. Overall, the punji stakes were a nightmare for American soldiers. Despite their best efforts to counter them, these simple stakes proved to be a formidable weapon for the Vietnamese military. According to some statistics, they accounted for up to 2% of all injuries sustained by American soldiers throughout the war. Another type of trap, also made from bamboo, but with a more complex mechanism, was the whip trap. Instead of using rigid bamboo, the whip trap was created using long, thin, and flexible bamboo stems. One end of the bamboo stem was tightly secured to a tree, stake, or rock along the paths frequently traveled by American soldiers. The bamboo stem was then bent back as far as possible toward the forest or underbrush and held in place by a trigger or rope. Bamboo was not only flexible, but also very strong, capable of withstanding significant pressure before snapping. When the trap was triggered by unsuspecting soldiers, the bamboo stem would spring out at incredible speed, striking anything in its path with tremendous force. To increase the lethality, the end of the bamboo whip was often equipped with sharp spikes, metal hooks, or even razor blades. Similar to punji stakes, whip traps could also be coated with human or animal waste to infect wounds, increasing the victim's chances of fatality. Even without these added elements, a precise strike to the head or face could cause severe injuries. The mace trap, which operated similarly to the whip trap, was one of the most terrifying traps for American soldiers during the Vietnam War. The Vietnamese military crafted these maces from various materials, such as wood, metal, or even dried straw or cotton. These maces could have a diameter of up to 60 centimeters and weigh as much as 20 kilograms. To amplify their lethality, they were often fitted with sharp spikes made from bamboo, tree branches, or metal. This deadly mace was suspended from above and attached to a tripwire stretched across the enemy's path. When a soldier accidentally triggered the wire, the mace would be released, swinging down from above to crush the victim's skull. This could result in instant death, but if not, the soldier would endure excruciating pain, as pulling out the spikes without causing further severe injury was nearly impossible. Thus, if a mace struck the head, the victim was left with two options: die immediately or face a slow, agonizing death. Next, let's explore traps that utilized firearms, with bullet traps being the first representative. Bullet traps were typically hidden in a hole in the ground, camouflaged with leaves and brush. Inside the hole, the Vietnamese soldiers would place a bullet within a bamboo tube, with a nail inserted into a wooden block in front, acting as a firing pin. When a soldier stepped on the trap, the weight of their body would push the bullet down, causing the nail to fire the bullet upward, creating a wound in the victim's leg. Although bullet traps typically only caused severe injuries to the foot or lower leg, not fatal, they were enough to temporarily incapacitate a soldier. Comrades would have to quickly come to the rescue, slowing the unit's movement and providing a perfect opportunity for an ambush. While bullet traps rarely resulted in death, their impact was enough to weaken the enemy's formation. However, larger caliber bullets, such as shotgun shells, were sometimes used, and they could be powerful enough to pierce through a leg and tear apart other parts of the victim's body. Worse still, if the soldier happened to be looking down at the moment of impact, the last thing he might see in this world could be a powerful bullet heading straight for his eyes. Another factor that made these traps so effective was their near invisibility. The hole used to place the bamboo and ammunition inside was not large, and since there were no wires or other obvious indicators, there was usually no sign on the ground to suggest that a trap was lying just beneath. The only way to detect it was to use a metal detector, but due to the trap's small size, one would have to bring the detector very close before it could be discovered. By that time, it might already be too late. Alongside bullet traps, the ingenuity and creativity of the Vietnamese soldiers were further demonstrated in the way they turned basic grenades into terrifying surprises in the jungle for American soldiers. The simplest method was to attach a tripwire to the grenade pin. Once someone tripped over the wire, the pin would be pulled, and the grenade would explode. A more sophisticated design involved placing grenades with their pins already removed inside cans to keep the safety lever from springing free. In this setup, the tripwire was tied directly to the grenade's body and only needed to pull it out of the can. This gave the victim very little time to react to the dangerous situation. Moreover, if multiple grenades were involved, even if only one was pulled out, the others would still be triggered by the initial explosion, potentially injuring or killing many soldiers before anyone could shout a warning. However, the strangest among grenade traps was perhaps the mud ball mine. In this case, the Vietnamese soldiers replaced the can with mud. They would remove the pin from the grenade and encase it in dried mud or clay to keep the safety lever in place. These mud ball mines were then scattered across areas frequented by the enemy, and it wouldn't take long for the mud to crack, causing the grenade to explode without any direct interaction from the victim. Additionally, the mud served another purpose, camouflage, making it nearly impossible to detect, even for experienced soldiers, thereby instilling fear with every step they took through the Vietnamese jungles. American soldiers not only faced hanging traps or booby-trapped bullets, but they also had to contend with the endless creativity of the Vietnamese soldiers in setting traps. From combat experience, the Vietnamese fighters quickly realized that American soldiers had a strong tendency to collect war trophies. As a result, before retreating, they often rigged grenades into anything in the camp that the Americans might find desirable. One of the most effective traps involved rigging grenades into flagpoles. When American soldiers lowered the flag, the grenade would explode. This tactic was so effective that the U.S. military had to issue warnings that searching for war trophies was an extremely dangerous activity. To conclude this list, let's talk about snake traps, one of the greatest nightmares for American soldiers in Vietnam. When falling into a pit, American soldiers might encounter two things at the bottom: sharp bamboo spikes or hundreds of venomous snakes. These were not just ordinary snakes. They were extremely dangerous species, such as the pit viper, whose venom could kill a healthy person within minutes. American soldiers even nicknamed them two-step snakes, because after just 2 steps following a bite, the victim would collapse. Young pit vipers were even more dangerous because they couldn't control the amount of venom injected when they struck, often delivering their entire venom load to the victim. To ensure that anyone who fell into the pit could not escape, the Vietnamese soldiers would often release a large number of snakes into it. These venomous snakes were not only used in camouflaged pits, but also in various other traps, such as being placed in their own backpacks to set a trap for the enemy if they were killed or captured. Venomous snakes were also released into tunnels that Vietnamese soldiers used to move through. Walking through these dark tunnels with only a pistol and a flashlight was terrifying enough, but not knowing whether venomous snakes were lurking in the traps made it far more frightening. A momentary lapse in focus could lead to a bite, causing the soldier to perish in the darkness, perhaps never to be found. Additionally, venomous snakes were used to turn anything of value to the enemy into deadly traps. When American soldiers found a Vietnamese supply cache, they had to inspect it very carefully to avoid quickly finding themselves in danger just a few steps later. The war on the S-shaped land brought terrifying nightmares to American soldiers, particularly through the frightening traps created by the Vietnamese soldiers. Taking advantage of the dense jungle terrain and their ingenuity, the fighters designed traps that not only caused injuries and death, but also instilled deep fear, creating painful and unforgettable experiences for their adversaries. Among the traps mentioned today, which one left the biggest impression on you? Was it the bamboo spikes, bamboo whips, spiked maces, booby trap bullets, grenades, or snake traps? If you know of any other traps we haven't listed, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below.